Are you looking to start a YouTube career and need that perfect lens for talking head style videos? Then the Lumix S 24mm 1.8 might be the perfect lens for you. Back when I was shooting on Sony, the Sony 20mm 1.8 was a lens I bought mainly because I got a good deal. And when I started doing YouTube, because of my small space, I needed something that was wider but still had a fast aperture, and lo and behold, the 20mm checked off all the boxes. If you like what you've been seeing from me, then that's great, because the 24mm is actually what I film all my YouTube videos with anytime I'm actually on camera right now. Without delaying any longer, let's get into why I think this lens is a solid lens to own in your camera bag. So let's talk about build quality and features. I want to start with this and make it a quicker part of the video because at this point, this lens has been out for a while and I don't want to rehash what other creators have already said in detail. This lens has great autofocus capability, great sharpness, color rendition, contrast, and basically no chromatic aberration. Outside of that, let's discuss the things that matter. Well, other things. The lens has weather sealing, a 67mm filter thread that matches the other S primes, and also shares the same size and form factor as the other S primes if you're looking to do gimbal work with multiple S prime lenses. I said that way too many times there. This is great because then you won't have to balance the camera differently every single time you put a different lens on, because all these lenses pretty much share like a similar weight. When and what to use the 24mm for. When it comes to real world use, I feel that a 24mm can be used in a few different ways. I use it primarily for talking head videos of myself. Also, it can be used for interviews if you set it off to the left or the right, and it gives you this like Netflix documentary style vibe. When it comes to a wedding, you can use a 24mm to get wide shots of a reception or ceremony space that's not well lit. If you're shooting other events, this is also a good gimbal lens to have on hand in case you're in a room with no windows or it's dark. Personally, I don't use this lens at a wedding because it feels too one-dimensional. I prefer to use my 24 to 105 f4. The low light capability is nice on the 24mm, but honestly speaking, if you're shooting a wide room or doing anything landscape, you're not going to have your aperture at like 1.8 and most likely a bit higher at like f4. So having a more versatile zoom at 2.8 or f4, I believe will be more versatile, heavier, yes, but way more versatile, and would kind of serve you in different ways on a wedding day that 124mm lens just won't. And honestly, you know me, I like to keep my bags light, so having that extra lens just for like maybe 1 or 2 shots is just not really worth it to me. A project I found this lens super useful for was when I was shooting an event and it was at night and I knew I'd be on a gimbal, and the organizer told me he wanted to show people conversating and to show the different rooms being full of people. This mixed in with a good zoom lens was a great combination of wider landscape shots and close-ups. For a talking head video, I feel that the 24mm is paired well with a 50 or an 85mm, as you can see right here, so there's like a dramatic difference in feeling that will keep your viewer engaged. As you can see, that's the vibe I've been going for with this entire video. Maybe not like with the 24mm because I want to be talking right to you, but with this 85 over here, it's kind of like that blurred background. It could be better if I had more space, but I'm doing what I can here with where I'm at. All right, so let's talk about the accessories to get for this lens that will kind of enhance it. So the 24mm on its own is a great lens, but paired with some accessories, you can really elevate the look for the different types of videos I mentioned. When it comes to outdoor style videos, I recommend the Nisi True Color Variable ND filter. I've used a few ND filters and choose this one because of its color rendition, as many ND filters have a color cast which can introduce a yellow or green tint to your image that's hard to get rid of in post if you're not great at color grading. Staying on the topic of filters, the next thing I want to recommend is a black Pro Mist filter from Tiffen. There are a lot of Pro Mist filters out there, or mist filters on the market, but I stick with the Tiffen ones because the black in the name means you won't lose the contrast in your image, as I find other Pro Mist filters just kind of have this look where it washes out your image, and I'd rather be able to do that myself in post than have it as like a permanent effect. Pro Mist filters give you the soft filmic and bloom look to take the digital edge off your image. In this situation, you can really see the bloom effect when you have lights directed at your camera. In this case, I'm using a 1/4 strength, but I wish I got a 1/8 for my prime lenses. If you're gonna get one for your zoom, then I would recommend a 1/4 and a 1/8 for your prime lenses. I'm actually not using a Pro Mist filter today. With my older YouTube videos, I usually do use a Pro Mist filter for this camera to make those lights back there kind of bloom a little bit and soften my skin, but Today, just to keep it consistent, I have both cameras with no Pro Mist filter on. Pro Mist filters are not super cheap, so another solution I recommend is Dehancer, as you can achieve a similar look without having to have a filter on your camera the whole day. Here are some weddings that I shot where I used Dehancer after shooting the whole wedding with no black Pro Mist filters, and I was still able to achieve a softer, less digital image without having to have a filter on my camera permanently the whole day. Now, the reason why you would not want a filter on your camera the whole day, if you're shooting in situations where, like, you know, your subject's backlit and stuff like that, you can get a lot of like bloom into your camera at times where you didn't want it. So if you're outdoors and say the bride and groom is like behind them is the sun's like beaming behind them, like it's gonna be a little chaotic if you have a Pro Mist filter on. So that's why in some certain situations you would rather be able to kind of make those adjustments after the fact in post with Dehancer. Dehancer is an expensive software, but if you really sit back and just look at how much you're going to spend on a Pro Mist filter for each camera, can almost be the same price as Dehancer. So the last like 5 weddings that I shot this year, I literally didn't use a Pro Mist filter for any of them, and I just shot it normally without no Pro Mist filter and then just added Dehancer afterwards, and I really was happy with the results. So next thing I want to talk about is the Lumix 24mm lens versus the Lumix S 35mm prime. The 24mm is a great lens if you want to do talking head videos and want that Netflix documentary look with a wide shot, but still have that background blur. If you have the space, you could use a 35mm, which I think is a much more versatile lens, but the 24mm just has a look to it that makes it unique. But if you could only pick one, I'd go with the 35. Another thing I want to mention with the 24mm is that if you want to shoot at 4K 60, then this 24mm will essentially become a 35mm once you crop into APS-C mode. So that was kind of my initial mindset when I bought the 24mm. I was like, oh, this is going to be more like a 35 if I want to go shoot 4K 60. Honestly, since I got this lens, I haven't been really shooting 4K 60. I've been doing more 4K 24, and I've grown to just love this lens for just being 24. But originally I had it in my head that I was getting it to make it like a 35 lens when I shoot 4K 60, but it's worked in other ways. So personally, I own both the 24 and the 35, and they have their place, but if I could only use one, I'd go for the 35, as I find it's more versatile on a wedding day and for events and stuff like that. And on the topic of filming weddings, if you're shooting super close, 24mm will warp your subject's face like you can see here. So if you try to get really close, it's not gonna look right. The last lens I want to compare is the Sigma 24mm 1.4. Last year when I owned the FX3, the Sigma R primes were my favorite to shoot on for their colors and contrast and the way it showed skin tones. They also had a big focus ring and a declickable aperture ring that made for a unique shooting experience. With that being said, the Sigma R primes are usually more expensive, and that 1.4 aperture doesn't make a huge difference from the Lumix that has a 1.8 aperture. In this case, comparing the Sigma and the Lumix, the fact that they're so close in price would make me question if the Sigma lens is a better option to buy. If you do own the other Lumix S primes, then I would say no, because the Sigma 24 has a larger filter size of 72mm, which would mean you'd have to get different filters for it, which can add up depending on what you buy. Now, someone could tell me, oh, you can get step-up rings, step-down rings. I'm not a big fan of step-up rings and step-down rings, just because I had a situation years ago. My step-up ring got stuck to my filter, and I literally could not get it off for like a year. I live in Canada, it's cold, and for whatever reason it got stuck to my filter and just wouldn't come off. I got it back after the fact, but it took forever. These Sigma lenses are also a little bit heavier because of the all metal construction. The metal construction to me makes it feel like a more premium lens, but if you're trying to have a camera with a lighter footprint, then the Lumix lens is where you want to be. Personally, at this point, I love Sigma R primes, but I do have all the Lumix S Pro primes, and honestly, they're great. I can't complain. I hope this video was super helpful, and if you want to purchase this lens, I'll leave a link below, and as always, the purchase gives a little kickback to the channel. Keep providing videos, but this video is not sponsored by Lumix or anything else I mentioned. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take care, and this is Statement.